Hey, everybody, how are you? It's Friday, and we're going to talk about improv and the business side a bit here today. And I have a bunch of awesome guests. Kristen, you're to my left or right, I don't know, in digital world. Why don't you start, introduce yourself, and we'll go around.
Absolutely. Happy to introduce myself. My name is Kristen Schier. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the co-artistic director at Curious Comedy Theater. I work closely with Stacey, and I run the training center at Curious. And formerly, I was out on the East Coast in Philly with the Philly Improv Theater. And I'm really excited to join everybody here today. Thank you, everyone. Shall I pass it to Jessica?
Oh, hello. My name is Jessica Zodrow, and currently I'm the Associate Managing Director at Curious Comedy Theater. And I've been teaching there as an improv teacher for about the last 5 years. My former life, I was in the theater, and I've come to long form in the last 5 years and fallen deeply in love with it. And I'm excited to be here today. And I shall pass it to Velvet.
Hello, I am Velvet. I'm in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, and I have been a lovely guest of this format before. Thank you for letting me come back again for this topic, and I will pass it to Elise.
Thank you. I'm Elise Rodriguez. I'm an improviser based out of Sarasota, Florida, but I'm currently in Miami, Florida, which you will note soon the sound of dominoes behind me. I'm very excited, of course, as always, to come back and chat with you all, and Stacey and Velvet and my new friends.
Yay!
Yeah! Stacey, red ball?
Yes, red ball, thank you. You're all awesome people, and I'm so excited. We wanted to talk today about, and we're missing Joe Bill today. He may come and join us a little bit later, but he'll be here next week, and I think John Carr is going to join us to follow up on the Second City conversations that we were having without anyone from Second City. So next week, we're going to do that. But today, we were having a conversation, and we being Kristen and Jessica and I, we're talking about our academy and how we want to structure that as we're doing the deep dive of re-examining everything and Curious's infrastructure through DEI lens, safety lens, all of those things. And also just like, how could this be different? How can we reimagine something beyond what we've inherited from the big theaters and small, because I have been influenced by a lot of different places. Anyway, so we started really thinking and talking about guru culture. And then I was chatting with Elise, who said she's had 2 conversations about that this week.
In the past couple of days. It's pretty...
Which is interesting. And Velvet being a guru, I thought...
That's why Joe, you know what? That's why Joe was like, oh no, I can't be here.
Yeah, that was a quick no. That was a quick no for Velvet.
Yeah. Wow.
Velvet gave him time. He threw a timeout. So we need to honor that.
You want to call me excellence in action and expert? That's fine. But don't throw the G word at me in the first minute. Come on.
Well, and I think it's really interesting because in the decade and a half almost that I've been running a theater, and I've traveled and experienced a lot of different theaters. And there is this difference, I think, between theaters that are, I don't even know what, I don't want to use the word temple. Like they're a place to study and learn improv, and improv is at the center. And then there are places where I call them a cult of personality, where the leader is in the center and improv is the means through which they connect the community. And I think there's a big difference in that. And as we're moving forward, and I think it ties into like everything that happened this summer, like tearing down these old statues and what ones can get torn down. Like, so first of all, there were people who didn't think any should get torn down. Then there were people who were upset about which ones got torn down. And I kept thinking, why do we make these sculptures to immortalize these people? Like, that's a real false idolatry anyway. So I just said a lot of things. And if anyone's got ideas already popping, feel free to chat. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so idol worship is at the center point of white supremacy. It's they are always going to reinforce their systems and remind you that you are lesser. So so that model, it goes way back further than any improv school ever did. It's very easy when you have the whole societal system set up a certain way to create your own microcosm as a way of control and the ego worshiping and the and knowledge dissemination as I am the way is
That's exactly what inspired this whole conversation with us yesterday was that we were talking about in creating our curriculum, sharing all of our pieces that we have, because I think Kristen comes at it from the opposite angle that I do. We meet in the middle. So she has this whole performance background and I come from more of a writing background. And so already we see those as complementary rather than competitive. And we're starting to create some video content and we want to make it clear from the beginning, hey, this is just one way. And it may resonate with you perfectly, or it may not resonate with you somebody else's way. And even when I was in Chicago and teaching, I would often be teaching at Second City, and I would say, if you were at I.O., you'd hear this way, and here it's done this way. And I love studying multi-perspectives and sharing that. And I think it's also more female, if I can make that assumption, just how we've been socialized, right? This is all of us. Whereas the sort of toxic male culture is like, this is me, follow me.
I think you used a key word there, which is competitive. And that is I think, huge aspect of this kind of guru culture because, and it blends exactly with what Velvet was saying, and that is that it's very egotistical and it is very much a white supremacy kind of American thing that I've seen, because even when I've traveled, like I remember that I went to Colombia to an improv festival down there, and we had an exercise that we did there that was really, really fun, and everybody was doing it together. And then Will Luera and I came back to Sarasota, we brought it back, but when we did it here, it became somehow competitive. It was like the moment that we started doing it, it was like, who could do this faster? And we were like, what just happened here? This was not supposed to be a competitive thing. So I think competitive is a big part of it. Like, who is better? I am better. Follow me. And I want to follow the better person. It is very much not the female way of seeing things.
There were 2 theaters in Portland doing improv when I started in 98, and it was very forbidden that if you were part of one, that you go into the other one. And that was articulated and pressed upon people. Whereas, I feel like we all do better learning more perspectives, and something that I've said 1,000 times, someone else Kristen can say it and it clicks for someone because she's just so much better than I am. No, because she's
I win.
better.
But because her perspective just clicks for that person. But I had noticed that even when I wasn't telling people they couldn't go to another theater, I think people make that assumption and they start feeling loyal, and they feel like they're betraying you if they walk into another theater. Have you all experienced that as well?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I feel like
sure.
it's very connected. Speaking of white supremacy, patriarchy, colonialism, and I'm going to throw out another word, religion. And it becomes like a church where it's like, I am a part of this specific church of improv, and therefore I will bow down to their gurus and their idols. And when we cross over, suddenly we're arguing instead of it's all flippin' improv. Like
Yeah.
there's no, the branding happens because of capitalism, because of white supremacy, because of cultures that we live in. We're like, we have to market, we have to brand, we have to bring people to us, when really the communities within these theaters are all just a bunch of beautiful weirdos who want to make up stuff together. So yeah.
Go ahead, Kristen.
Something I heard pretty early on, I was really lucky to take a workshop with an amazing teacher, Jill Bernard. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of her in the improv world. She's great. And something that stuck with me that she said really early on was, we are all our own school of improv. And I think that that's the case because everybody integrates the information that they get from wherever they come across it in a unique way that helps them to express their voice as an artist. Another thing is that improv is like, it's really a team sport. And I think you can think about that in all aspects of it. So if you're really focused on me, and how do I look good, as a teacher, as somebody who's running a school or a theater, then I think you are getting it wrong. And as in terms of like various improv scenes in different cities and stuff, I think we need to think of it like an improv scene, and we're all fighting over these tiny scraps of food underneath the table, right? And none of us are getting fed that way. So let's just support each other, help each other, develop our own voice. And the right kind of focus on you is like, okay, how can I do what I want to do the best, treat people the best I can, do the best job I can with what I want to say, and not worry about what everybody else is doing, but help them to do their thing.
So, but I think like Colin Thornton has a really good point. He just wrote this comment that everyone has something in mind when we say improv guru, but none of the teachers think of themselves necessarily as a guru.
Teachers think of
Yeah.
Fair enough. As I was reading, like, yeah, but I do think there is an amount that comes from everyone else to elevating that person to that
certainly
level.
Yeah.
And I don't know why we feel like we have to. Yeah, Velvet, you go ahead.
Yeah, I just in Toronto a few years ago now, they Bad Dog ran annual symposiums, and out of one of those came this conversation about hey, we're all this big community, but we are all divided by schools, and not just Bad Dog, but like the instructors all came together and said, hey, yeah, we're all teaching at these various schools anyway, so we're going to help pull down those walls between us because we are all one community, and that really helped it did help to move some people away from that territorialism that was happening. But also at the same time, there is a school by which commercially you are expected, that's the path you take if you want to get on to SNL, right, and or whatever the vehicle is you're looking for. So even though people are saying this, the system is still kind of supporting, yes, but you're still going to take all of your classes over here, even if your loyalty is over there. So, I mean, those two things were running at the same time until the pandemic. And then the pandemic allowed people who were too afraid or not in a situation where they could start to be their own guru or to consolidate on a wider platform, were able to go, wait, there are options? Yes, there are. I'm one of those options? Yes, I am. And really start to invest in the art form more than the branded avenue for accessing it. So I'm looking forward to, a lot of people are looking forward to post-vaccine getting back into live spaces and to going back to their home theaters. I'm looking forward to when those same people demand access to knowledge outside of those four walls, and that it's not based on popularity, and it's not based on six other people call this person a guru, so that's who we're bringing in. It's like, I'm really looking forward to far more diversity of thought than these are the 6 ways that you get to level C.
Oh gosh,
So-
10 different things I want to say real quick. You go ahead.
Same.
You go, Kristen. I'll wait.
I just want to, we might put a pin in this for later, but sometimes you sell a class because of who is teaching it. And people want to know who's teaching it. And I think what we're talking about here is that thing. It's sometimes the teacher is a draw for students, whether you want it to be that way or not. So I just want to make sure we hit that part of the conversation, but we probably have a lot of steps before we get there.
It does tie into where I was going to go, and then I'll pass it to you, Elise. Joe Bill commented, because he is watching us, how guru means different things in different cultures, and he was also earlier delineating between, if you think of your teacher as a source of knowledge versus your spiritual guide. But I don't even know. I think there are spiritual guides who aren't a guru. To me, I think guru means you're following the person more than whatever it is that they are teaching, and you see them as your only source. As opposed to your preferred source. Like, you might want to take a class with Will Hines because he's going to teach you game, probably, in a clearer or more distinct, the UCB approach in a specific way, and you'll get it in a nutshell, because that's what they've been specializing in. So if someone's sharing information they're specializing in, that's one thing. But in guru in different cultures reminded me of, in a way, improv theaters are like karate. I love karate films. And you have these karate schools, and then they go and challenge the other people. And now Cobra Kai is sort of embodying that as well. And I think the idea is there's something very human, and that's not white supremacy, right? I mean, the early karate films and Bruce Lee films, I'm not sure if they inherited that behavior from white culture, or if there's just something very human about we good, you bad.
Yeah, they're all propaganda films, so that's a different conversation, I think.
And maybe not, they're patriarchal, perhaps, right? Perhaps, yeah.
Well, and just the way of leadership, I think, is also, so we're talking about many things, but one thing I've been thinking a lot about is we all right now, whether we want to or not, are leading in a patriarchal, colonialist way from top down, right? And there are many other ways of having leadership, even in your classroom as a teacher. So to be I'm the teacher, you follow me, you answer to what I have to say because I have the authority, I have the power. Then there's this whole other beautiful realm of opening up and being what is a power structure? How can a dynamic be different than from the top down, which we are all living in, no matter what job we have
And there's this root in theater, though, of theater, like the military. I have to break you down and then build you back up, which doesn't exist in accounting.
Yes, it does. It does.
It exists in law. I'll tell you that much.
But my question is, and so, a clown in clown training, there's a lot of that same thing. And part of that, I feel stems from fighting or teaching people how to perform in heightened adrenaline state. And so, for example, Del Close used to, and Paul Sills are both famous for like throwing chairs at people or giving them a check back, like terrifying them. And when the first few years, I don't know, there's an echo coming. I don't know where it is coming from. But I, sorry, that threw up. Oh, when I first started teaching at Curious, all the time. And I would see that when people got up to a certain level and then they started doing shows, they would regress back to their kind of level below as soon as the audience was introduced and the stage. And I was wondering if a lot of that style of teaching, of breaking you down, is to make the teacher so scary, or make your general, your commander so scary that the other thing doesn't even compare. So it's like, oh, the first time I went on stage after being taught by Del Close, it was nothing, because it wasn't nearly as scary as he was. Does that make sense to you all? But I
follow the logic. It does not make sense.
No. And but I think that's where it stemmed from, but it's not the only way. And it was accepted as the only way for a really long time.
So what I wanted to say earlier, actually, I'm glad that I held off and that everyone else spoke, because it went directly into what I wanted to say, which was the teaching style. But I think that to kind of shift some of this toxic guru culture that we have, at least in the US, and I think a lot of improv communities throughout the globe in general, but in the US, I think to shift some of that, we have to start from the classrooms, because as you said, we are in a kind of a power culture here. Like, the teacher has the authority, but for me, when I'm in a classroom with students, I tell them, I am going to, in the next 2 hours or whatever time I'm going to spend with you, I'm going to basically give you my opinion. And this is solely my opinion based on the information and the experience and skill that I've developed. But you go, and if you think I'm crazy, you tell me to go fuck myself in your brain. Don't say it. Don't say it to me. I will slap you.
Don't call me a guru.
Well, shouldn't the classroom be a place to test the values and the principles and the approach that you believe in, and to have that experimented with in an open and honest way? So we're asking our students to come in with an open mindset about the approach. I think as teachers, we also have to come in with an open mindset and say, maybe I don't know, right? I mean, obviously I have some experience, but maybe I'm here to find out as much about this as you are. So being so sure, so set, so codified in your approach, never to have it questioned, challenged, or that's and that's exactly why when I say to them, this is my opinion, I say, try it on for size. Like, or especially if it's a workshop that I'm leading, that people, like you said earlier, people came to this workshop because I'm teaching it, right? Or they hired me to coach their team because I'm Elise. Fine, great. That's fantastic. That's the point of me doing the work that I'm doing. However, I tell them, this is my opinion, and if it doesn't work for you, then it doesn't work for you. The point is to get as much exposure as possible to all of the different approaches and all of the different opinions, and pick whatever is for you. I have a workshop I can't remember the name of it right now. Improv Identities, all together now. That's the name of the workshop. And the point is for everybody we're just going to do exercises to help find our own individual approach and our own humor individually, and seeing how that can work with every single kind of improv identity. And I call it improv identity because I find myself to be a certain kind of improviser, right? Like, that's how I feel. But the point is that we should all be able to do that together and not choose one method or another. And the teachers have to start teaching that from where we are in the classroom.
Yeah. And I love the idea. Oh, go ahead, Kristen.
No, that's okay, Jess.
Oh, I was going to say, to then extrapolate that when we're talking about training centers and academies, where in our beginning levels, that's what we're gifting, is the approach the ideas of this particular training center. So yes, I am your teacher and the conduit of this information because I've been trained in this curriculum. So try this on for size, which is an improv game, right? Like, let's try this on for size. And when I the language of with any exercise right now, I say, I would appreciate if all of us trust this exercise. And then afterwards, I promise we're going to talk about it. And there's not right or wrong, but our trust comes from we're diving into this pool together, or this puddle, if you will. That is this one exercise where we're focusing on relationship building. So let's let all the other stuff go. And I can side coach and be here because I understand it from this level. And then we'll talk about it. And I want your feedback.
And because you've done it for 20 years and you've invested in classes and you've practiced at every opportunity, right? So there is something that's coming along with you and in you that has specific value. And that is the reason that you feel worthy of asking somebody to sort of suspend disbelief, right? We're asking them to trust us, even if they've just met us. And no matter what, we're saying, please allow me to facilitate how all of the next 2 hours go, and defer to me if there's a moment of tension or conflict, which is why I think the timeouts that we're putting in, we do timeout. You can call timeout at any time. Everyone cheers and you take a break to talk about what was happening, whether it's something I did, something someone else did in class. If you feel uneasy, you are empowered to say, stop, I need a second to process this. I'd say the biggest moment of trust I ever had in improv was doing a duo with Mark Sutton. And we do a show called In Every Life. And it's a comedy, tragedy, and a romance. And in one of the tragedies in Miami, in the Miami Improv Festival, way back at the turn of the century, we were in the museum. And that used to be one of the venues for the festival. And the museum was in a corner, like the stage was in this corner and the audience was all around. So there was no backstage, no side stages. Anyway, for the drama, Mark came in as a cop telling me that my daughter had been killed. Now that is like a thing people win Academy Awards for acting with preparation and coaching and a script. And so I went into full fight or flight, which actually helped me pull off playing that, because I was just like, what? How am I going to do this in a respectful way? Like, I just was completely freaking out. So he came in the scene, and through the course of the scene, the cop kind of seemed to cross some boundaries. It was a little bit creepy. And then Mark and I in the same moment realized he was the predator. And I got up to run away, and Mark took my arm and threw me down. And I just want to be clear, Mark and I had been performing for years, like super intimate friends, shared greatest victories. And so as I hit the ground very softly, was kind of rolling, I had this moment of like, am I all right? Is this all right that this happened? I had to process so fast. Is this okay with me? And ultimately I was like, I'm physically okay. I'm emotionally okay. And our relationship is okay. Had to all go through my mind. But that was based in so much history with me and Mark. And so I think in classes, empowering people to press the pause button, that they're not going to ruin the class, that they're not going to be seen as a negative Nelly or a complainer or a party pooper or a pain in the ass. It's a benefit to us that you use this timeout, because we're all
which they may be less inclined to do if they see the teacher as some sort of
certainly
really, above reproach, above,
And I would do the inverse of that. Oh, excuse me. I'm so sorry, Wells.
No, keep going. Please keep going.
Velvet. I want to call him Wells, but it's Velvet Wells.
It's okay. I know. It's because of Will and Wells. I understand. Keep going.
I was going to say that even the inverse, I've been thinking lately about the inverse of what Stacey just mentioned, which is we want to empower people to feel like they can call a timeout. But I think it's also equally important, and maybe even slightly more important, to start infusing the culture with nurturing the timeouts. Like, we start from the everybody else before we go to the person. Like, have courage, right? Like, the recycling industry puts it on us to save the planet instead of the plastics industry, has put it on us to save the planet instead of the plastics industry saving the planet when they're the ones ruining it, right? So it's kind of like we need to first say, hey, everybody, if someone calls a timeout, you shut up and listen.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Versus,
that's what we do. You have to
hey,
cheer.
everybody, if you feel harmed or if you feel like you need a timeout, you call a timeout. No, hey, everybody, like, it has to go first from the outside in.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean.
Thank you. Elise, sorry.
No, go ahead, Velvet.
That actually was where I wanted to start as well, was to say that, yes, we may have the timeout as one of the mechanisms, but I think that capitalism has trained us to create this product. So we have a certain amount of time. Stacey, we were talking about slowing things down. I think one of the ways that we can naturally slow it down is not only to have those kind of timeout mechanisms, but also the reflection mechanisms that Jess mentioned, and have that built in, baked into the amount of time allocated to the topic, to know that we are going to spend time in, like, how do we feel about this? How do we think about this? Does it work anymore? Like, to allow for that kind of conversation. And then the last part of it would be modeling. So it's one thing to say, okay, so everybody, we're going to have a timeout, enthusiastic, let's do this. But if you as the facilitator are invested in this as one of the ways that you can all work through this moment and move on for the time being, then that is a very different way of approaching it than the school told me I have to do this, which is sometimes how it comes across.
And
that's not it.
I just want to emphasize how much it has to be celebrated and how vocal you have to be. Same thing with running a theater and encouraging people. Not saying anything isn't enough. Like, not telling them not to go somewhere else is not enough. You have to fully not only give permission, which is even one step forward, you actually have to encourage people to try different schools of thought, different cities, different areas, and same thing. And what you were just saying, I was like, how could we model that? There's a lot of times there's a scene in a class where somebody's starting to hit a boundary, and I'll just go, okay, scene, and then we'll talk about it. It just dawned on me that if it's in this uncomfortable moment and we're all feeling uncomfortable, I should use the timeout language so that we're all understanding that it's true.
Especially on Zoom.
Yeah.
Where people are muted probably anyway, so they're sitting there like they're having a moment, they're having feelings, and they're like, well, somebody else is going to say something, right? Because, like, you shouldn't do that to hot dogs, and it's up to that's an opportunity for the facilitator.
Training, yes. But Kristen has something to say, and then, go ahead, Kristen.
Well, I come in contact with so many level 1 students, as we're talking about this being a product, right? Who are way more interested in getting the product that improv has to offer rather than really truly investigating the process that it is. And I think that then they start to see a model of gatekeepers to get me to that place. And you as a teacher are this suddenly refined and finished product or example of what improv can deliver for you. And it's just going about it entirely wrong. But, there is some push-pull with seeing this as an art form that is valid in its own right, and also a way of practicing just being a human being. And, practicing empathy, support, and creative risk. And I think that we have to kind of tear down all the gates. Art is for everybody, whether you do it at this, excellent, like this level that is professional and career oriented, or whether you are just somebody who is interested in practicing your artistry through improv. And the teachers can't just be viewed as, or shouldn't allow themselves to be viewed as somebody who says, it's, you get to do this and you should think about it.
That's like Viola Spolin, like 101, page 1 through 10, is like not creating an approval based culture, but one of just development.
And there are plenty of improv gurus that, whether they are explicitly saying this or not, are creating an approval-based system in their classes, and then sending people straight to their therapist.
And I wanted to talk about therapists too. So another danger that makes me crazy, and I just want people to, I guess I'm just so naturally skeptical that I've been lucky so far, but anyone who is doing improv as a sobriety tool, as a therapy tool to help you deal with trauma, please make sure that vulnerability, that's the number one thing I see get abused, is the term vulnerability. If someone is trying to get you to delve into your personal trauma, vulnerability beyond a comfort zone that feels appropriate for a classroom of improv students, please make sure they are actually a therapist.
Yes, they're actual drama therapists. I have friends with them. I've worked with them. You can pair, I'm saying this to all teachers, facilitators, speaking of training and access to actual training. If what you're interested in is to dive into improv as a way into therapy, then there are ways of doing that are not your entry level 1 class at an improv theater, right? Because theater and therapy
even your level 8 improv class at a theater is not necessarily an appropriate place for you to be doing deep inward healing, right? Exposing your vulnerabilities and discussing your traumas. It's very uncomfortable for me to even think about unqualified people. I mean, that's what Scientology takes advantage of. People who come in, they talk to not therapists as if they're therapists. They record all of that information and use it in a whole other way to control you and to disempower you. Sorry, go ahead, Kristen.
Yeah, and then they build the cult following, right? Just like these gurus, a few of them in improv, build this cult following, and then the students that have been in the guru's classroom that have been awakened now come into my classroom and are like, but this is not what I heard from this guy.
Well, this started yesterday.
I apologize for that. That was
Kristen, we were talking
but I sent them to you. I sent them to you for the next level.
Kristen, yesterday you were telling the Rosowski. Was that you who took the Rosowski, Joe Bill?
Oh yeah,
David Rosowski.
I took that. I loved it, right? Because these guys are amazing at what they do. They've been in the game a long time. They have a lot of wisdom to share, and they taught a workshop together. Couldn't be more different, in the way that they approach the work, in my opinion, and I think they would agree. The workshop was basically watching them in a very loving way disagree with each other about how to do this work. And, you grab and take things that work for you from watching these two folks who are a little further down the road in terms of their experience, and it's valuable. And I love to see that. I love to see people who are open to challenges in their perspectives. And one of the things that I wanted to just...
Let's clarify that.
Yes.
Yes.
They respect each other.
Totally.
Yeah. Of course. Yeah, totally.
But there may be situations where somebody who is in that position feels like they are above their students in the classroom. And then that sort of disagreement is not welcome.
Right. And what we teach is how to improvise with, not improvise at. And what you want to do is learn with your students, not talk at them. And the other thing that I just wanted to touch back on with this whole therapizing, deal, I think it's really subversive and dangerous. And I just want to say that we want artists who are in control of the statement that they make in space. And when you are revisiting trauma or unpacking something that's kind of unresolved, you're not in control of the statement that you're making in space. And that is not a healthy place to operate from as an artist. So, you know, we've got to have people who are making, you know, informed decisions about what they want to say and do as artists. And leveraging that is,
Go ahead,
in
Jess.
connection, I know it was a while ago that we saw Joe Bill's comment about training for the facilitation part of teaching.
Yes.
But I'm of the firm belief that we need clear training paths at every training school for improv for our teachers. And I feel like that's an accessibility issue and an inclusion issue as well. So that there's a clear path to, if I want to be an improv teacher, if I want to be an improv coach, I also need the access to training, sensitivity, all the training that helps make a classroom run in an open, accepting, beautiful way. And I think coming from a theater background, when I first came to the improv world, I was honestly quite shocked with how many people I know who are improv teachers who've literally never received any kind of training. But I also want to be clear that I understand that paying for teacher training is an accessibility issue, because I know how much in debt I am for my master's degree, right? So finding another thing in the new world that I'd really like us to find is actual training for people, so that it's not just because you have something to say, you get to be a teacher. That's, I think.
I always think of gyms. I always bring up this analogy, but there are people who work out at the gym a lot and they want to be able to work out all day long, be at the gym all day long. And so they become trainers. And that does not mean that they are great trainers. It means they love the gym. And there are trainers who understand our bodies and injuries and how to manage workouts. And there are trainers who just want to be at the gym and can cause you physical harm because they aren't that interested in learning how to coach you. They just want to facilitate their own life. Go ahead, Kristen. I
have to, I'm so passionate about this. I don't want to step on anyone's toes, but like, a while back, I posted on my Facebook, hey, if you don't see coaches and directors that look like you, and you want to be doing this, and you want a little support or just strategy around how to do it, I would be happy to just talk with you and share whatever I have that might help you. I got approached, categorically, I got approached by several women and BIPOC folk who don't see instructors like them. And they were like, I've been improvising for 7 years and I think maybe I'm ready to coach. Right. And then I would get, cis het white dudes who are like, oh yeah, I took my level 1 class. I'm ready to go. Let me coach. Right. And I know I'm throwing out the towel at a group of people, but it's so interesting that also those access points, some folks feel like they need, that they don't have the right to say all that they've learned and shared just because of these structures that we have. And it's so disheartening to me. It's so disheartening because they have a lot to share.
Well, and as a woman who grew up, with a poverty mentality, with parents who had bootstrapped themselves and taught us a poverty mentality, I've cherished a couple things that came with that poverty mentality. And one of them being the constant drive for more information and betterment, right? I don't feel like I've been crippled with a distorted sense of self-worth. Maybe I have on the other way, but an overly confident sense of self-worth and entitlement. Those two things I think can make you resistant to learning, to growing, to developing, and not just result in you being kind of a guru teacher, but that whole sense of like, this is the way and this is my way also implies that you're done deciding your way. I mean, I've been doing this for 20 years and taught a class I have a student, and the way that she has been giving, it's a sketch class and everyone gives feedback. The way that she has been giving feedback to the other students, I was like, why haven't I been giving feedback like this? Like, not what she's saying, but the manner that she's saying, even if she's not talking to me, is making me feel amazing. And I was just like, I want to talk to her, make sure that I'm carrying that tone. But if I felt like I was done and better than her, I would miss that opportunity to learn from her. Anyway.
I think fun fact that you were just saying that, not you, Stacey, you, Christy. We're just saying that that you've seen like white cis men say after 101 want to teach a class. I just want to remind everybody that men invented tampons.
Are you sure? Is that true?
So I just want to clarify that.
But
I don't take that one. No, thank you. That's not on me.
Could you explain? Well, Velvet Wells, inventor of all women. Yeah.
That's the solution. Like his name was Earl Haas. The man who invented.
That's
tampons.
Amazing.
So that just goes to show.
There's a book called A Women's History of the World, and there were different styles of, forever of managing that. But I always want to bring us back to the comments. There's been this conversation with, and I don't know how to pronounce, if it's Fawad, if anyone knows him, I don't know. And Joe Bill are having,
yes.
I don't know if I'm pronouncing it. Yes, I want to pronounce it correctly.
Oh gosh, I knew this. I heard somebody say it and now I feel like I'm getting it wrong. I'm sorry, sir.
I'm apologizing now. But they're having a conversation on the side about improv as an art form or an approach. Right? Theater improvisation is just one style of improv, and it's just one style of theater. So we're already kind of splitting hairs if we try to call it like this is this special thing that just exists in its own world. But I wonder if it's part that it is such a young art form that generation of Dell and Paul Sills and Keith Johnstone, if they're the gurus, because at that time they were the ones who seemed to be bringing something into existence that didn't exist
and yet
before.
They couldn't have been there without Viola. So
right, and
right. And I would say a distinction, because coming from a theater background, I still have theater friends, and I love you all, who give me so much shit for now being an improviser, right? So there's all of these distinctions in the arts.
Well, stand-ups in improv too.
It's elitism.
Give them shit for needing a script.
Right.
right. But I think comedic improv is, I don't know, and maybe one of you has a more
guys. Commedia dell'arte has been around forever, and Latsies have been around forever. Yeah,
I would say currently some of my students, it's like what I would say is like UCB can make you a famous actor. So there's like all inside of the art of improv and improvisation. Even there's so many distinctions because as America is all about labels, and that's something we're trying to break open too, right? Fuck labels. Why do we have to label everything? That just helps us sell stuff. Well, but it's all the same. Like, anyway, sorry.
Well, there is a church aspect to it, and I don't mean that in a negative way, right? There's a reason why churches have existed for so long, and I think they provide community on a regular basis, a broader community than just your own immediate family. And they also include rituals that release good feeling hormones. Singing together releases bonding hormones, dancing, moving in synchronicity. All of those things are physiologically satisfying to us. But as the world's getting more secular, or at least the United States is getting more secular, then what replaces that? and improv is one of those things that replaces that. And if you do it in the right way, my last name is Hallal.
If you do it with integrity, you do it with integrity, right?
Hallal means
there's
the right
so
way.
much. There's so much of improv that is so beautiful, but that could very easily just be perverted into something that is ego based,
yes,
and instead of integrity based. So it makes me again go back to the leadership aspect of it. Whether you're leading in a classroom or leading in a rehearsal or leading a theater,
or
it's a matter of, or a church, right? Or any kind of group that comes together because they have an interest that is similar or a drive that is similar, or they're like-minded, right? It's a matter of leading with integrity and openness versus we have the answers and this is what it is.
That's right.
And decentralizing the power structure, like and having a system in place so that, okay, I'm here for this period of time, but I'm already training the person who's going to be taking the space next, or the many people who are going to take these spaces next. So I think that you can move away from it has to be the pyramid scheme to going back to what actually worked before some systems were forced upon us. I think that doesn't change anything of what Elise said of the removing the ego from it. You can still have all of those rituals, all of those games, all of those ways that people commune together.
And Tom was talking about gurus not thinking of themselves as gurus. And I actually think that's a great point, that you also have to recognize the power that you have. Right. You might be in a tiny little town, with your tiny little theater and your tiny little community, and you feel like a servant. If you are doing this with integrity, like I feel like we're serving our audiences, we're serving our artists. All we're doing is trying to solve the puzzle every day. How do we make our artists happy and survive? And that's it. But you don't feel powerful necessarily until people start to make you aware of the power that you hold. Like when I founded the theater, I was in a relationship for many years, and then we broke up, and I was single for the first time as the artistic director of a theater, and it just felt creepy for me to date anybody in the theater. Like this would feel like a pastor of your own church, and it just doesn't. But you're there 24/7, and those are the only people you see, and those are the only people you encounter. And it's like, but you have to recognize. And actually, for All Jane, we had a producer come one time, and I think she came because she wanted to hang out with other comics. She's a comic, and it wasn't, somebody misinterpreted something she said. We had to talk about it. And she was like, even not in LA. And I'm just here as a comic. People know what I do. And it's it's an imbalance. I can't just let go and be myself even here. And that was sad, but good to realize, right? Yeah.
Well, I hear in many things that were just said, like I really appreciate the word integrity. And there's also a level of responsibility.
Yeah.
When you are in the moment, in the seat where people are looking to you for answers and help and guidance, right? So that level of responsibility is a beautiful power, right? Like as a teacher and facilitator, I love the ebb and flow. And I also love those moments where like, oh, I'm going to follow my integrity and my instinct and lift up this moment in class and because of the exercise I chose, right? Like there's still us in it. And then it's the responsibility of, because of that, what are my boundaries? What are my appropriate, authentic and integrity-filled responses? Instead of, I'm Jessica Zodrow, so Jessica Zodrow does this. Go ahead, Kristen.
No, I think it's important, right? Because there's a lot of this art form that's self-generative. So almost all of it is, right? You're coming up with it from who you are. So it feels very close to just like a personal read on someone when you do this. But also we're just teaching people how to make stuff up. Like they're just doing scenes about being in a boat. like, or like
that's exactly the comment that just got posted is about. It's so low stakes. Ultimately, it's a long comment, but it's like, it's filling some kind of need, but. That's what I love about you, Kristen, is your perspective. Yeah. So I would want to talk about teachers also.
Like, how can I be a better bear in this scene? Like, let's get rid of all, like, that other stuff is important, but let's also just realize that we're helping people to make stuff up if we can be of help. Like,
and Jill Bernard the other day posted about wanting to continue taking classes because she always has. And she loves learning. And she said it's sometimes, though, when she's in a class, she's making the other students uncomfortable because they have put her up in this guru sort of position. And so I think sometimes when people achieve a certain amount of success, they're afraid to fail in front of anybody. And I think that's another way to break guru culture is to let people see you. I was taking a singing class and there was an improv student in there of mine, and the teacher said, "Are you sure you want to take this class? Should I move you into a separate one because you have a student here?" I was like, I hope I model failing with joy as much as I possibly can.
Yeah, I think we've all been there where we've done a jam or something, and then we've had a student who was in the jam with us say, "Oh gosh, I'm so sorry that I did that scene," and like whatever. And we're like, "What do you mean?" Like, sorry. Like,
I was in a class. I feel like a good way to work on that is that I was in. I think when I first went to Sarasota, and I was taking whatever Will was giving, whatever classes he was offering, because I was just kind of starting to get enmeshed into the Sarasota improv culture. And I took a class on directing with him. And there was a moment, and I had done directing and I had given notes and I had taught, but there was a moment where one of the, Sarasota has its, like the audiences have their favorites that have been improvising there for like 20 something years. And one of the improvisers that was there that had been improvising for like 20 something years, she is in the scene that I'm supposed to give notes on. And I just was like, how am I supposed to give notes to this person who's been doing this for 20 something years? And then we worked through that in that class, which again goes back to what Jessica was saying, which is the training. Like I had to understand in that moment, like my job here is a director, right, in this exercise, and she is a person in a scene. And I wanted to give her a note, and I had to do that and learn how to do that in a way that is still respectful to her and her experience, and not like what would be the equivalent of mansplain it, right?
Right. And I know all
and understand that I do have an opinion.
And I know that all the women, at least, I've been mainly working with women over the course of this time. So I can at least speak from this perspective, even just myself. But also, I think Kristen and Jessica will agree. We want that opportunity to just be a performer and to not have to be in charge all of the time. And sometimes to feel like an equal with our peers in a show and let someone else carry that burden of having to direct and critique.
Yeah. Karen Grazi, who's an amazing performer, teacher, director out in LA. Writer, all the hyphens. I asked her for some advice because I was going to be directing a cast that was far more experienced than I was. And she just said, you're there to observe and your stuff. So just be the observer that can give the feedback. Because when you're in it, you don't quite see, as clearly as somebody on the outside. And that was so helpful. And that's why you learn not to be an asshole, because the tables could be turned.
So you just said something that I think is a really good line, like something practical for us to use. And that is, if you're an observer, that is, here's how I'm going to give the note. Here's what I'm seeing. What I'm seeing.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right. This is what I just saw. Hey, what did everyone else just see? But this is what I just saw. Here's what I saw.
Yeah, and we're getting on an hour here. We could talk about, we'll have to do a part 2, but I just wanted to echo on it just reinforced what Jessica said about responsibility too. And I think it is a beautiful time where we can start decentralizing the art form, even film, right? Like the expense of it has been what has kept it exclusive and given the gatekeepers all of this power. And podcasts are popular now because you can sound good for very little money. And I'm hoping video will evolve that way. And but theater, right? You need a space, you need a lights, so there is somebody guarding it. But now that you can put your shingle out to teach, I ask that you make sure you do feel ready to teach, because you are responsible for those people in that class. And if you are unprepared to teach, you can just waste people's money and time, which are super valuable, but you also can damage people's growth and process if you're not fully prepared to teach. Go ahead, Elise.
I just want to give a PSA to all of the teachers that have been out there for a very long time. Know who you are when you're in the classroom. So responsibility, but self-awareness. So if you are a cis white man, know that you may be making people feel feelings in that class. So as we say in the legal field, please govern yourself accordingly.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's a beautiful way to end today, even though I really do have 100 more things I would love to say. Well, let's do this some more another time. Thank you so much, Elise and Velvet and Jessica and Kristen and everybody watching, and Joe Bill participating from the side and helping organize this. Next week, we'll have Elise and John Carr, and we're going to talk about Second City, and I'll invite some other people. I haven't made the roster yet, but join us next week. And thank you, everybody, for being here, for listening, and for surviving.
Wash your hands, wear a mask.
Have a good day. Wash your hands, wear a mask, be nice to people.
Yeah.
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
Good.